So in this video, I want to talk about why Black people, and more specifically Black women, prefer the hood-rich Black woman luxury aesthetic and its promotion, as opposed to the most recent Black woman in luxury aesthetic that is becoming popular. And if you haven't already, make sure you check out my last video about why I believe other Black women are concerned trolling the Black woman in luxury aesthetic. It touches on different parts of the conversation that I believe are important for Black women to understand. So when I say hood-rich aesthetic, I am referring to the most popular rich Black woman representation that is heavily influenced by hip-hop culture. It's generally a Black woman that came from humble beginnings and had to endure a lot of pain and suffering to become successful and have the finer things in life. She's either an entertainer or a social media personality or entrepreneur, aka girl boss. She is a typical Black Instagram baddie. She's designer from head to toe. She may also be a single mother to a rapper or a Black male entertainer, and he may spoil her, but there's still a strong emphasis on being an independent Black woman. And these type of women will be quick to remind you that they do not need a man. They can pay their own bills. They'll proudly showcase the ways in which they spoil their men. And obviously, this is not the only Black woman in luxury promotion, but it is the most embraced in the Black community. But in recent years, unambiguous dark-skinned Black women especially have started embracing what is considered to be a more refined and elegant aesthetic of Black women in luxury. And it is often referred to as the Black woman in luxury movement. It still has many of the same elements of the hood-rich aesthetic. There's more of an ethereal quality there, in my opinion. And in Black women in luxury, there's a lot of focus on self-care and leisure as opposed to grinding and hustling. And even though many of the Black women in luxury are also very successful women, they can be career women, they can also be girl bosses, but being a kept woman or a housewife or a stay-at-home mom is more accepted and embraced in those communities. And personally, I like some of the women from both groups. I'm very happy for them as a fellow Black woman, but I identify more with the Black woman in luxury aesthetic. And for me, it's not even about the unboxings or the designer clothes, even though I love those too, but I appreciate that Black women in luxury supports the hypergamous lifestyle for Black women. Black women being provided for and enjoying leisure, not just luxury. So I prefer Black women in luxury over the hood-rich aesthetic, but when you get into the details, both sides, and specifically how they are promoted to Black women, it's clear that they are both flawed and there is room for improvements. Both can be critiqued and neither of them are above reproach. However, the issue is that currently only one aesthetic, being Black woman in luxury, is being examined and picked apart because it's quote-unquote too Eurocentric, elitist, and classist. While the other side, the hood-rich aesthetic, is constantly being defended and glorified in the Black community, despite the hood-rich entertainers that represent it also being very Eurocentric, elitist, and braggadocious about their luxuries. With anything quote-unquote hood that's Eurocentric, the anti-Blackness is usually overlooked by the Black community, or it's excused or downplayed. And with anything Eurocentric that doesn't fit in the hood box or isn't a part of street culture, suddenly the anti-Blackness needs to be examined and think peace to death. And to Black people and other Black women, a Black woman in luxury is more relatable and considered worthy of luxury when she had to struggle for it, if she's considered worthy of it at all. And this goes for Black people in general, but it seems to be exacerbated with Black women, and especially dark-skinned Black women. And I base that on the visceral reactions to us having access to luxury and being promoted in luxury that's not stereotypically Black or hood. And that brings me to Courtney C's TikTok video.
I don't relate to most of y'all because a lot of you look at people like Ari and Jada, beautiful girls, but like, that's your goals. That's what you want to be like. Goals for me is the mom that pulls up to Whole Foods in the brand new Escalade with the Mima Zari stroller. Her kids are decked out head to toe. She's decked out Lululemon head to toe. And it's like 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. You know she don't got no job, but she's living her best life. Like, that's my goal.
So you heard what Courtney had to say about Ari Fletcher and Jada Cheese. This TikTok went semi-viral and it eventually got back to Jada. So she responded under the TikTok and she said, "I don't get it. I live way better than that with one kid and $80,000 Birkin bag, hopping out of one of my 4 cars. Nobody want to be white. Relax. Be you. And so Courtney responded saying, you absolutely do. You are rich, gorgeous, and live an absolute dream life. I never undermine your success. I just want something different. So Courtney then made another TikTok.
Okay, sometimes y'all are literally infuriating because you put words in my mouth and make assumptions, and that's literally not what I said. If I want to say it, I'll say it. But let me clarify. I'm not denying the fact that these women are rich. I understand that they're rich and successful. They have multiple businesses. Blase, blase, blase. The point that I am trying to focus on is the aesthetic. It's a different aesthetic. And either you get it or you do not. And if you do not, this is not the post for you.
So as you can see, Black women were not feeling what Courtney said at all. A lot of Black women felt that she was looking down on Ari and Jada. Many accused her of wanting to be white. And they were also saying how Ari and Jada have more money than Courtney does, basically attempting to bring her down a notch because, they felt that she was quote unquote acting bougie. And obviously, I think a lot of Black women were caping for Ari and Jada because they are celebrities. We know how fan bases can be. But I also think that they were triggered, one, because the hood rich aesthetic is more relatable to Black women than the aesthetic Courtney identifies with. And also because white women and white people are most associated with the lifestyle Courtney identifies with. So a lot of Black women took what she said as a personal rejection. To them, rejecting that aesthetic means she quote unquote wants to be white or doesn't like being Black. And this is a very common assumption about anyone in the Black community that isn't stereotypically Black. And I looked through Courtney's TikToks and her social media, and being that she herself is actually dating a rapper like Jada and Ari and other things I've seen from her, I just don't get the same impression that a lot of Black women did. It sounds to me that when she said she wanted something different, for the most part, I think that meant she wants to be a kept wife as opposed to being a girl boss or entrepreneur like Jada and Ari. And I could be wrong, but based on what she said, it sounds like she prefers a comfortable life of leisure and simplicity more so than the hustle and all of the flashiness that comes with the hood rich aesthetic. So I think in this case, the wannabe white accusation was a little bit of a reach. And to be fair, there are certainly whitewashed Black women that look down on the ghetto aesthetic or hood rich aesthetic. But I also think it's very important for Black women to remember that much of the aesthetic that is considered hood or ghetto today is not inherently Black. There is very little that is Afrocentric about that look. And let's be honest, a lot of Black women have adopted that look because they are trying to make themselves look less Black or racially ambiguous. The long Indian and European looking weave, the glued down baby hairs, they're doing that to mimic biracial women. That is not Afrocentric. The long eyelashes, the contour noses, this is nothing but Black women either exaggerating their beauty or adding to it to compensate for being Black or being dark skinned. None of that is Afrocentric. And how is any of that different from a Black woman who is quote unquote trying to sound white, like many of you accuse Courtney of trying to do? Black women, I hate to break it to you, but a long blonde wig is going to make you look like you want to be white more than a Valley Girl voice or Lululemon ever will. And I just find it really interesting how y'all all of a sudden know what a non-Black aesthetic looks like with Black woman in luxury, but ignore and defend Eurocentric beauty practices any other time with the hood rich aesthetic. There's also very little complaints about light-skinned biracial women being promoted in luxury and Black men being promoted in luxury, specifically Black rappers and entertainers and their light-skinned biracial wives and girlfriends. And I've seen conversations here and there about it, but I don't see as many think pieces. I don't see as many video essays about it that I do with Black women in luxury. I find it very interesting that as soon as unambiguous dark-skinned Black women are being promoted in luxury, and not even on a mainstream level, but online, it's all of this pushback and outrage, but we welcome it with open arms when it's biracial women, especially if they identify as Black and they're into the hood rich aesthetic, but even when they're not. We, Black women, are some of their main supporters, just like we are with Black men who promote a Eurocentric standard of luxury. And that's obviously because a lot of Black women are Black male identified, and we also like to live vicariously through biracial women. So what those two groups do, no matter how Eurocentric, it generally is going to get a pass from Black women. There may be complaints about colorism in that regard, but there's not a lot of talk about their lifestyles as it relates to white supremacy or capitalism or consumerism. So it's very obvious that only one type of luxury promotion in the Black community is acceptable, despite both having Eurocentric elements. And those who are familiar with my content, you know that I have called out both groups on that, which is why I say that both have room for improvement. I'm not trying to pit the two groups against each other, but I have to point out the differences as well as the similarities to bring balance and accuracy to this discussion, because some of you are just not being truthful. You're being very one-sided with your criticism and you're being hypocritical. I mean, I've been on this platform for over 6 years and I am constantly accused of quote unquote policing Black women for my critique of our anti-Black beauty practices. But the same people accusing me of that can tell the Black woman in luxury influencers that they're trying to be white. And so it seems to me like it's only policing when it's something that you don't agree with. Because if it's really about being Eurocentric, you have to be consistent with your criticism. You have to call out everybody who's doing it, not just the side that you don't identify with. And are Black women a monolith or aren't they? Are we policing the way Black women act or policing what they wear, or aren't we? If we aren't, or you say that we shouldn't, then stop policing Black women in luxury for doing what you allow the hood rich Black women to do. Y'all need to pick a side and stay there. But I know that you won't, because as I've stated before, it's all about stop policing Black women until one is doing something you don't like or identify with. Then you want her to behave differently or act more like you. And this is why I personally think that Black women in luxury would still be a problem to some people, even if it were aesthetically less Eurocentric, even if it didn't have the European labels and the unboxing. I personally think it would still be a problem because the current Black woman in luxury ideal does not include a lot of the stereotypical Black politics and activities. It's not Black enough to its detractors. That's the issue. And that brings me to the next part of this video. What elements would the current Black woman in luxury spaces need to be more acceptable to Black women and the Black community at large? What exactly is Black enough for Black people? And I'm just going to put it plain. Strong, overworked Black women, single motherhood, dysfunction, pro-Black politics, overt sexuality, struggle, and everything else included in street culture is Black enough for Black people. That's what Black is to Black people. So any space or promotion for Black women, specifically dark-skinned Black women, unambiguous dark-skinned Black women, that does not include enough of those things is Eurocentric to most Black people, including Black women. This is a huge reason Black woman in luxury is getting so much pushback. It lacks relatable dysfunction. Summer Walker is the perfect example of how Black women like to see Black women in luxury. Rich and crooning about ain't shit niggas on her album. That is the only time a Black woman in luxury that looks like Summer is relatable to us, which is why we accept that luxury aesthetic over Courtney's preferred aesthetic. And I will say, we accept them on the runway, like with Naomi Campbell, when the promotion of those women is few and far between. But when it becomes what we consider to be too much Black women, especially too many Black women who look more like the average Black woman participating in Black women in luxury, then we start feeling some type of way. Unless she's singing about struggle, acting in a struggle love movie, being a Wakandan warrior. It has to be something that ties her down to the struggle. And the subject matter of Summer Walker's album is pretty much all about the struggles of being a man's fourth baby mama. And even though we dragged her for it, when it happened, we dragged her for shitting on London's other baby mamas. But now that Summer has become a baby mama, she has a #1 album. Black women are loving it. I really love the vocals on the album, the arrangements of the songs, the production, and I'm always proud of and very happy for a Black woman artist that lands a #1 album. Summer has the talent, that is undeniable. But again, just like we analyze and critique everything else, we should be able to discuss both the good and bad about her album. And the bad is the subject matter, because it's about her real life. It's about her dysfunctional lifestyle. And part of why we love the album is not just because it's relatable to most women who've experienced a breakup, but because it has all the ingredients that make it Black enough. It's got enough baby daddy mama drama and street culture ingredients for you to feel comfortable with it. And now she got a whole nother nigga's name tatted on her face. So we're gonna get another album, still over it, and we're gonna make that one go #1 too, because relatable dysfunction. A lot of Black women are tired of this kind of promotion, which is why we're moving away from it. But what I'm saying is, you can't clown her for these decisions and talk about how stupid she is and how much she's gonna be struggling, and then expect us to not look at that lifestyle and be like, I don't want that. I'm gonna go over here in the black woman in luxury spaces where black women ain't struggling, or at least not struggling about being, the fourth and fifth and sixth baby mama. Relatable dysfunction is also part of why we came to Dani Leigh's defense during her altercation with the baby. And she's not black, but her dysfunctional relationship dynamic, being a black man's baby mama, is something many of us relate to. Dysfunctional relationships with black men in general is relatable to black women. And for all y'all who are going to say, oh, well, white women struggle with white men and other races of women struggle with their men too. We know. But let's not lie about the struggle with black men being a unique struggle. It's the worst one, and that's really not debatable. And it's so relatable that black women were caping for Dani, a non-black woman who is colorist and has repeatedly shown that she does not respect black women. But so many black women still felt the need to come to her defense because she was a baby mama in distress who clearly had a baby by the wrong man. I will say that as a woman, I can feel empathy for any woman who was in Dani's situation, but I am not going to vocalize that for someone who disrespects the collective of black women. And after all that caping some of you black women did for Dani, she turns right around and says that black women were jealous of her because she prefers black men. So after all that, she still threw black women under the bus, and which I knew was going to happen. I said this in my video about Dani a while back. I mean, I didn't expect the turnaround to be so quick, but I'm glad it was, so the black women who were caping for her can see how foolish they look defending a Latina who clearly does not like black women. And don't get me wrong, I was proud of the way a lot of black women responded to Dani. A lot of you were like, no, we not caping for you. We have empathy, but you on your own. But it was still too many black women for my taste, and too many very visible black women. That's what really bothered me. Keke Palmer defended Dani. Ari Lennox defended Dani. Yeah, I don't recall any prominent Latina women coming to Dani's defense. I don't see many Latinas coming to our defense in general when black men are disrespecting black women. But it's usually always dark-skinned black women specifically caping for people who would never cape for us. And as long as we disproportionately keep doing that, I'm going to say something. And it is completely normal for women to feel empathy for other women. We are feminine women. We're normal women. We're going to feel empathy for another woman. However, it's not beneficial to express empathy publicly to people who don't feel or express empathy for you. And I believe that many of us felt so much empathy for Dani. One, because she's, a mixed Latina, and we tend to feel more empathy for women with that phenotype as opposed to our own. But again, it's also because of the relatable dysfunction. And then went right back to being mad at her for saying black women were jealous of her. It's like, when will we learn? And what I want you guys to understand is that much of what we relate to in some way requires the glorification and pedestalization of toxic black men. And we do drag those men. We did drag the baby, but that's after we man stroke them. So it's like, it's always when it's too late. So the idea that a black woman who does not want to glorify dysfunction, or a black woman who does not identify with or relate to harmful tropes and stereotypes of black people, the idea that a black woman like that, quote unquote, wants to be white, that is what's Eurocentric. Having functional relationships, having a healthy expression of sexuality, having boundaries and not overextending yourself, and protecting people who don't protect you, supporting people who don't support you, those things aren't exclusive to white people. They aren't inherently Eurocentric, and it's actually anti-black to suggest that they are. And look, there are definitely black women and black people who are classist and who look down on quote-unquote ghetto black people. As a black woman who's been insulted with the term ghetto, I've certainly encountered those kind of people. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that they don't exist, but we have to admit that a lot of what's considered ghetto or street culture is backwards, it's dysfunctional. And as a black woman who's considered ghetto, it doesn't hurt me to admit that, because I don't embrace or relate to most of that dysfunction. And again, what about hood rich or street culture is Afrocentric? The rabid violence and colorism against black women, is that Afrocentric? Men that don't take care of their children, is that Afrocentric? Men that glorify non-black women, is that inherent to blackness? None of us can help the class we're born into, and I do believe that ghetto people deserve respect if they aren't harming anyone. But I find it odd that the black woman in luxury detractors who focus so much on racism, white supremacy, want to completely identify with a culture culture that was negatively affected and altered by the system they hate, and then want to turn around and claim it to be 100% intrinsic to black people. You guys cry day in and day out about how white people brainwashed black people, they fucked us up so bad, but you're still embracing the anti-blackness and the aesthetic that was influenced by them. And then you get offended when other black people and black women specifically decide not to embrace it for their own peace of mind and well-being. No black woman should be made to feel bad that they don't want to live the romantic lives of women like Ari or Jada or other struggle baby mamas like Summer Walker. You shouldn't expect us to admire them or want to be in their situation when we see how bad and how often these women suffer. Sure, they aren't suffering financially and we can admire them in that way. We can look up to them in that way. But how often is it that we see them going through hell and or complaining about their relationships? How long do you expect black women to witness that kind of dysfunction and continue to identify with those women or relate to them or idolize them? And before I get accused of ghetto shaming or baby mama shaming, if you're really concerned for black women and you can point out the harm in the black woman in luxury aesthetic and the promotion of that to black women, then we should also be able to highlight the harm of struggle love and its promotion without getting in our feelings. If black women can create all these think pieces on the problem with black women in luxury, then surely I can talk about the problems with our terrible mating choices and the promotion of that and not be accused of hating black women. If we are discussing what's harmful to black women, let's discuss all of it, not just the harm that you feel comfortable discussing. Like I've quoted in previous videos, 84% of black mothers are the primary or sole breadwinners in their household. And that's due to most of them having children with low value black men who do not marry them. And if we're honest with ourselves, we can admit that it's a more pressing issue than a black woman going to a spa or buying a Chanel bag or watching other black women do it. Which promoted lifestyle at this point in time is worse? I think you know the answer to that. If celebrity black single mothers are going through hell with their baby daddies, what does that mean for the everyday black single mother who doesn't have a rich baby daddy or $1 million business? So in my opinion, it's extremely counterproductive to fight so hard against promotion and imagery that directly counters the street culture that has proven statistically to be harmful to black women and their children. So if you really want rest and leisure for black women, defending and or glorifying an aesthetic that promotes them working and struggling the most is counterproductive. And make no mistake, there are black women from every class, including both upper middle class to upper class, who find dysfunctional promotion for black women to be fitting, or they find it to be quote unquote cool or fun. Similar to how a lot of white people do, and honestly that is a whole separate video, because I've been noticing for a long time how a lot of black people who did not come from the hood, they like to embrace hood culture and the promotion of hood culture because it makes them feel closer to blackness, and they're unable to fully grasp why that is problematic and how damaging that can be specifically for black women because they've just never experienced it. It's really interesting, but I'll save that conversation for another video. But even if those black women can't personally relate to the representation that falls into the categories I mentioned, they're still most comfortable seeing black women promoted that way because that's how we've become accustomed to seeing ourselves in the media. Deep down, it's the only representation that we think we deserve. It's not just about what we see as black culture or what's Afrocentric. It's also about us being very resistant to promotional change because of what we've been forced to accept. And part of the reason I endorse black women in luxury is because it counters the limiting tropes that have been forced on us. And unfortunately, black women like Ari and Jada, they fall into that typical mainstream promotion of black women. And yes, they too are black women in luxury. But one thing the black women in luxury promotion does not have is the dysfunction. And I think that is subconsciously what a lot of black women, especially on this side, are pushing back against now. It's not just about the look. It's not necessarily about the aesthetic and trying to be white and not ghetto. It's just that we don't like what usually comes with the ghetto promotion. What Courtney described is a lifestyle. Most of what we consider hood as it relates to both the men and the women in this community comes with a lot of mess that any black woman with some sense will try to avoid or will not tolerate. And because this is the culture that is most most popular in the Black community, because it's the most elevated in mainstream media, the backwards hood mentality and everything that comes with it has permeated across class in the community. The rabid misogynoir, the colorism, the entitlement from Black men, the effeminate behavior, the stinginess, the men want to be spoiled or they want to go 50-50. The majority of those things are present with most of the men in the community, no matter the class. So Black women who are more on the traditional side don't find that appealing. And all of those things are likely what many Black women are subconsciously rejecting when identifying with the newer, more universal Black women in luxury promotion. And of course, the promotion is not really new. There are many Black women who have been living in luxury. It's just that now they are more visible because of social media. But the point I'm making is that it's much deeper than simply rejecting Blackness. As many of you know, a lot of Black women are divesting or they're distancing themselves from the Black community. And each Black woman is doing it for different reasons. Some Black women are divesting for peace of mind. Some are doing it for a better lifestyle that comes with less baggage. Some are divesting to have better options in men. And yes, it is that bad. And you know it's that bad when a Black woman gets called anti-Black or a wannabe white woman for preferring to be a wife that has children and in a healthy marriage rather than be a stressed out single mother to a horrible man. And this is not to say that women participating in the most recent Black woman in luxury promotion all have perfect lives or the perfect relationships. This is not to say that Black women promoted in luxury have to be perfect. This is also not to say that married people or middle class to upper class people don't also have dysfunctional lives. Many of them do. We already know this. But as someone who grew up working class and moved into upper middle class, I can tell you from experience that it's different. There are still problems, obviously, but it's a different and a better set of problems, in my opinion. And everything gets better. Your environment as well as the men you have access to, men of all races. And my point in saying this is that anyone who tries to equalize hood dysfunction with higher class problems is not being truthful, or they have not experienced both to know. And what I know is that you cannot bring people with that hood mentality on your way up. This could be friends, this could be family members, whoever, because they will weigh you down. They will weigh you down in every way possible, emotionally, physically, financially, mentally. And that is what's happening to a lot of these accomplished women who go out and become baby mamas to the wrong men. And this is why it's very important not to date or have children with men who have a hood mentality, no matter how much money they have, because the masculinity in some way will be lacking. And this is not to say that you should attempt to only date men who come from money. Most men of all races do not come from money. Men who actually come from money are rare. It's really about finding successful men who do not have a hood mentality or a poverty mindset, no matter where they come from. They are not impossible to find and attract, especially if you have the same mindset. And that's why leveling up is not just about appearances and how you look. You have to level up in mentality as well, ladies. Otherwise, you're just going to find yourself with the same hood problems in a different tax bracket, in a different zip code. So you have to level up your mind and your way of thinking. And no, that does not mean you have to completely change into a new person or become a wannabe white woman. I'm still a Black woman. I'm still proud to be a Black woman. But yes, I had to leave most of that hood shit behind. And you will too if you want to live a happy life. Trust me. Because a lot of Black women are allowing that mentality and just Black community conditioning overall. They're allowing that to ruin their chances, whether it be pro-Black conditioning, mammy indoctrination, religious indoctrination, or whatever. A lot of Black women are taking that stuff to the extreme, and it's holding you back. And it's influencing Black women to choose poorly, even when they're capable of doing better. And listen, I am a very empathetic person. I get that nobody can help the class that they were born into or what they were raised to believe. And I would never condone mistreating someone based on that alone. When you don't know, you don't know. But the point is, you can learn and unlearn certain beliefs and behaviors. That's what this channel is all about, helping dark-skinned women unlearn all of the toxic conditioning that they were taught from the Black community. And that includes unlearning all of this hood mentality and hood behavior that we get bombarded with in the media through promotion. And I don't think that anyone can be upset when Black women do their best to avoid the damaged people that come from toxic environments, especially when they work so hard to get out of that. And quiet as it's kept, some of you defending street culture the hardest, you don't idolize the lifestyle either. You don't want your daughters and your nieces to idolize it. And I know that many of you aren't going to want to hear this, but there is no way to help younger Black women avoid these pitfalls without what you consider to be quote unquote looking down on these men and women and their dysfunction. You can't tiptoe around the truth to be nice. At some point, you're going to have to be honest and call a thing after you do all this capping on the internet about excluding and looking down on ghetto people who made horrible decisions and how that's just so bad and it's classist and it's elitist. At some point, you're going to have to admit that you don't idolize these people either. And again, nobody is perfect, nor do they have to be. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But realistically, you cannot idolize or look up to someone who's constantly associated with misery or something you don't aspire to be. It just is not possible. And I keep using the word idolize because really what you want us to do, you want us to put the lifestyle that Courtney was describing on the same level as the hood lifestyle with the baby daddies and baby mamas. And I'm sorry, with all of this, the dysfunction with that, it's just not going to happen. You may not be saying that explicitly, but that is what you want. And instead of trying to make that a black thing and shame people into idolizing that or embracing that as a black thing, why don't you instead associate a better lifestyle with blackness? Help to create a better lifestyle within the black community. Because as long as these men and women in particular are publicizing their baby daddy, baby mama drama, and the women are publicly agonizing behind that, they will not be idolized in the recent black woman in luxury aesthetic, despite them being rich. Because the black women who enjoy the aesthetic, including myself, we want to see happiness. We want to see whole black women. We don't want to hear about being a fourth and fifth and sixth baby mama and all the woes that come with that. That does not fit in the new luxury aesthetic for black women, and that's okay. It's a good thing. If you want better lifestyle and better representation for black women, you're going to have to exclude people. And does that suck? Yes, but there's no way around it. And when we talk about how some black women will be left out of the black woman in luxury aesthetic, if it's because they represent and reinforce destructive behaviors or damaging stereotypes, as harsh as it sounds, they don't need to be there. And I'm fully aware of why we give these women grace and why we empathize with these women. Many black women were not raised in healthy environments. We were not equipped with the right tools to succeed. The lifestyle Courtney identifies with is less relatable to black women because most black women are not in the position to be kept wives. And for multiple reasons, both systemic and cultural. I get it. But while it's understandable, just because something is relatable does not mean it's something that should be promoted, embraced, or glorified. Especially if it's actively destroying the lives of black women. It has nothing to do with poverty shaming or baby mama shaming or black male bashing. That kind of thinking that says any rejection of dysfunction involving black people is automatically anti-black or Eurocentric is, in my opinion, backwards and counterproductive to our image as black women and our well-being. And I get the mindset that says nobody should be excluded or made to feel less than. And if we could compartmentalize all of this, if we could say, oh, let's focus on the system and not the people. If we could really compartmentalize like that, we would have done it already. Unfortunately, focusing on the system and everything the system did to us and how white people did us so wrong, that gives us a lot of reasons to excuse black men's bullshit and tolerate the shit that we don't need to tolerate from them, as well as other people. You can stay woke, but you can also keep your standards high and enjoy luxury. So I do have more to say about black women in luxury because there are so many layers to this, but I will save my other commentary for future videos and in this one here. Let me know what you think about this video down in the comment section and I'll catch up with you in the next one.